Overwhelmingly passing a bill that forces TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance to divest from the app or face a nationwide ban. They got 6 months. It now heads to the Senate, where members like our next guest says it raises serious constitutional issues and even emulates the authoritarian nation where we're trying to protect ourselves from. Let's bring in Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator Paul, why do you believe that TikTok is not a danger to America?
I don't think it's a question of whether the allegations are true or false. I think when you're alleged of a crime, you have to be convicted of it. So you can't really take someone's property in our country without a conviction. That's in the Fifth Amendment. You have to have due process to take someone's company from them or force them to sell. But even beyond the Fifth Amendment, the First Amendment says that those 180 million Americans who express themselves on the platform have a right as well. There's already been a preliminary decision by a federal district judge in Montana that tried to ban this. There were 2 decisions under Donald Trump when he tried to ban this. They've all been found unconstitutional. And the thing is we can like or dislike TikTok. I've actually never looked at TikTok. But the thing is using it or not using it, whether you own it or not own it, really has to be according to the law, because there's a real danger. For example, Fox News, I don't know, maybe you have some foreign owners. I don't know if everybody's an American citizen. And then what if they say, well, Fox News is giving misinformation on the election? You have a foreign ownership, you have misinformation according to the government, and all of a sudden they say, well, we're going to shut down Fox News, or we're going to shut down Twitter. So the bill isn't just about TikTok. It mentions TikTok by name, which is also a problem because laws are not allowed to target one company, but there is also a danger that it goes beyond that.
So I want you to hear with the FBI. So in terms of banning it, I think national security should trump that. And it being that we're finding out that Beijing is designing this algorithm to help divide America over the hot issues that you debate every day in Congress, from race to gender and all these other things, knowing that it's been around since 2016, Gordon Chang came out and says it's like allowing 170 million spy balloons over America. And here's what the FBI director said yesterday.
That kind of influence operation, or the different kinds of influence operations you're describing, are extraordinarily difficult to detect, which is part of what makes the national security concerns represented by TikTok so significant. Americans need to ask themselves whether they want to give the Chinese government the ability to control access to their data.
So, I mean, doesn't that concern you? Do you think, do you see a difference? Do you think there should be maybe a listing of nations like Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran that should not be able to own entities like this?
Well, here's the first thing, and this is the most important fact of all of this, and it needs to be debated, not assumed as a fact. The company is owned 60% by international investors, 20% by the 2 Chinese software engineers who developed it, the entrepreneurs who began the business, and 20% by their employees, 7,000 of whom are American. So it's a very diverse ownership. It's not owned by the Chinese government. In fact, on TikTok's board, there are no Chinese nationals that control this that are associated with the government at all. They're CEOs from Singapore. So this is an international corporation, and like every other international corporation, they deserve their day in court. You can't just take their property. Look, I have a lot of arguments with the Chinese communists. I have a lot of arguments with the Saudi authoritarians, but I'm not saying we should allow banning anybody to do business with the Saudis because they have an unsavory government as well, and because they spy on their people.
Senator, did you see the hearing, or were you part of that hearing? I can't remember what committee was in front of, when the CEO of TikTok was there trying to rationalize why we should leave it in this country?
You know, I wasn't in that hearing, but I do know that they have been working very closely with our government to try to adhere to anything they can do to stay open in our business, in our country. They've offered and actually have transferred most of their data to Texas, to an Oracle cloud. They have review of the data by Oracle to make sure it's being controlled here. They're offering to go through what's called CFIUS. CFIUS is a procedure where foreign-owned countries are trying to work to have American boards. They've also worked with the government to try to do
fundamental. I know about the Texas project, and I wish it was effective, but it isn't. We put $1 billion into it, or they did. But they did. He could not assure that
Brian, that's your opinion. That's your opinion.
No, nobody thinks the Texas project did. No, but nobody thinks. Let me finish. Nobody thinks the Texas project is up and running and is effective.
I do. So the thing is when you say nobody believes that it is.
Let me just finish. They could not answer. The CEO would not assure that Beijing would not have access to personal information for 170 million Americans.
I don't think that's true. I don't think
which
that's
is
true.
number one with young people. It is true. The number one with young people
even if it
is
were true,
now.
Brian, it's an allegation. You are making allegations against a company owned by Americans, and you have to prove it in court.
Who owns that company? Who owns that company? ByteDance. ByteDance is owned by China.
No, it's not. See, that's a lie, and you're defaming the country. You're defaming the company. 60% of it is owned by international investors, 20% is owned by the software developers who are Chinese, and 20% is owned by the employees, 7,000 of whom are Americans. So it's a complicated
controls the
ownership,
algorithm?
but it's not owned by the government.
It's not about profits. Who owns the algorithm?
TikTok owns their own algorithm, and it's actually not in China.
And who owns TikTok? ByteDance. And who owns ByteDance? The Chinese government.
No, they don't. See, you've just told a lie, Brian. You can't say on TV something that's a lie about a company.
Okay.
That is an out-and-out lie, and it's provably
What is
false.
a lie?
And they're not owned by the Chinese government. TikTok is owned privately, 60% by international investors.
ByteDance controls the algorithm. That's all that matters. You're talking about profits.
Let me finish.
I've been listening to you.
Let me finish the answer. 60% is owned by international investors who have made investments in this. 20% is owned by the two Chinese software engineers who developed the app, and 20% by their employees. Who
controls the algorithm?
And 7,000 of them are Americans, and the algorithm's not in China.
Yeah.
Everything is held outside of China.
You're comfortable with TikTok influencing America, and you believe that those 60% of foreign ownership controlled it. Senator, thank you so much. I got to go to
Constitution.
You
cannot take people's property without due process.
Right.
If you believe that there's a national security exception
there is a national
to the Constitution, then you believe that Fox News could be shut down, that Twitter could be shut down.
Senator,
That's
thank you very much. I'm up
against
against a hard break. Thank you very much.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
It's not about justice, it's not about agenda, it's not about mobilizing people, it's about dialing for corporate dollars. These two parties have sold the U.S. government and the American people to the highest bidders.